The world does not seem as vast as it once was. What used to take months to navigate can be transported in a matter of hours. Messages can be sent around the world in an instant, and speaking to another person can be accessed with the touch of a button. With this ease of communication and transportation comes complications. With instant access, nations need to act quickly and decisively, leaving nothing to miscommunication. It becomes more and more interesting to look at the idea of a global language that encompasses all administrations and organizations. This idea is not a new one, as languages have been artificially created to help these issues as early as the 1890s. While none of these have successfully become a universal language, there are a few contenders closer than ever before. In this video, I'm going to explore the concept of a global language. The term lingua franca is used to describe a language which is spoken by two different groups who do not speak the same language. This does not necessarily mean a language used by everyone on the planet, but instead as a language that is used across the globe to communicate on a common ground. Different factors allow a language to become global, primarily in linguistic variables such as number of words and prominence in historical writings, but most key is the power of the native speakers. And who else knows the power of their speakers than the English? The sun never did set on the English, at least as far as their language is concerned. It's used in a majority of global institutions, not to mention many prominent nations. Culture, economics, and influence spread language, and makes it important to learn if one is to be successful in the growing global community. It's impossible for everyone in the world to speak a single language forever. You just can't have people drop the language they already speak, write, and use in daily life anymore. At this point, we arrive at what is currently the best candidate for a global language, English. But what about Chinese and Spanish, you ask? Or might not have asked, but I'm saying anyway. While there are more global Chinese and Spanish speakers than English, English still has more global influence than either language. In many ex-British colonies, English is not spoken by the majority, yet is still an official language. Other Anglo-descended nations like the United States, Canada, and Australia are also economic powers who trade and communicate. Yay, empire! From a linguistic standpoint, English is a versatile and prolific language. With modern-day influence among pop culture and media, it has the largest separate word count of any language. This allows for more description and variance that is key to a global language. After all, language is expected to encompass the entire expanse of human thought. Differences in culture are not quite as impactful in translation as English as other languages. While it seems that this is the one and all for global language, this may not be the case. While creating another artificial language to solve this issue is just as impractical, modifying the English language to make it more suitable on a global scale may be a much more practical approach. One notable example of this modification of English is Basic English, created by Charles K. Ogden. To say that is a simpler version of English may be an understatement. It constrains itself to under 1,000 words that contains basic words for daily life. Some basic grammar rules also exist, including the prefix un to indicate the negative version of the word, est and er to modify adjectives, ed and ing to alter verbs, along with some other very basic English concepts. How did this never come to mass popularity? Well, that's because it doesn't have much credibility to actually work. There is no indication that it can function as a usable language for anybody, simply because it follows enough English rules to make it complicated for beginners, yet has such a limited library of words that it can't be used to convey thoughts efficiently. It hasn't been used widespread ever, and for the most part has been dormant for the last half-century. A more popular form of simplified English is Special English. Arriving in 1959, this language is best known for being used by the official United States broadcast, Voice of America. This is actually an alternate version of English used by the broadcast of the United States government. If a government broadcast uses the language, it's at least made it farther than most artificial languages. This greatly simplifies the word count to a point where a coherent story and information can be told without sacrificing too much detail. At the same time, words are spoken at the third of the pace of a normal broadcast to increase the ease of listening for newer English speakers. It already functions as a global language of sorts, using the basic tools of its mother language to still spread ideas and information. As it doesn't function as a global language, it is still a step in that direction. For many, this isn't optimal. English being the language of the globe would cause massive issues to those who have not been exposed to the language much, or have little to no experience speaking it. The largest issue with this is that every language would be inconvenient to a large number of people if chosen to be a global language, and many people will be left out. The solution to this bias towards a pre-existing language is somewhat unconventional, but undeniably interesting. The solution is artificial languages, which gives much less bias to speakers of a native language, as the language is made by new rules and stylings. Constructed languages are an anomaly in human culture, both in nature of their creation and their purpose. They intend to connect people across an artificial language to break the largest cultural divide of all. This isn't easy. After all, convincing somebody to abandon thousands of years of language, the core to any culture, is a massive undertaking, especially since the language is not commonly used and created by a single person makes it even harder to sell. The most popular constructed language by far is Esperanto. Created by Polish-born L.L. Zamenhof in 1887, it was designed specifically to act as a language created across nations to unite people. Currently, it's recognized by UNESCO. With this kind of recognition, and especially with this large number of speakers for a constructed language, it's apparent that Esperanto is in no way a novelty. It functions as an alternative to English while maintaining a large library of words and vast influences from a number of different languages, used by many organizations, however not as the primary language for them. For example, no governments use it as an official language. This doesn't mean no government ever uses it, however. China has updated its official government site with daily news in Esperanto for over a decade, along with radio broadcasts. The language has been successful as far as constructed languages go. It's even been recognized on Google Translate. It's a prominent language in the international community, but it still pales in comparison with what is used by a much larger population across the world. It's unlikely we will ever see a language spoken by every human on Earth. It's unlikely that the issues of translation differences will be solved anytime soon, and it's very unlikely that anybody would quit speaking their current language to appease this utopian dream. The divide in language will always exist, but the larger issue may be the divide that would stem between us and our precursors if we ever do lose our common tongue. This is Cody of Geography Hub.